Taming the High Cost of College, episode 115.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have a great interview with Dr. Toinette Gunn. She is the VP of Programs at Chicago Scholars, and she's going to talk to us today about Chicago Scholars and other programs that provide services to high school students to help get them on the college path. So Chicago Scholars' goal is to find students in the Chicago area that are looking to go to college but may need some additional support, whether it's first-time students where their parents don't have a lot of experience, or maybe it's low-income areas. There's all kinds of reasons that students might want to plug into these programs. Now, if you're in Chicago, by all means, this will be useful. But even if you're not in Chicago, we cover a lot of detail about how these programs work. So if you feel like your student is going to need a little extra support, maybe you're a parent or a single parent or a situation where you don't have a lot of experience in college as well, and you just want to plug into a system that would provide more help, you need to listen to this program and understand how these programs work. And before we get into that, on Brad Recommends, we're going to talk about career planning. What does your student want to be when they grow up? And a little bit about how to solve that conundrum if you're undecided. And a brief discussion about athletics. All right, let's go ahead and jump into Brad Recommends.
The latest tips, tricks, and tools you can use today. This is Brad Recommends on Taming the High Cost of College.
Today on Brad Recommends, I want to talk about two areas. The core area that everybody needs to work on is career planning, and then the optional area is going to be athletics. Again, as a reminder, if you want to hear about or read about all 20 core areas of college planning, in other words, the 20 areas that you need to focus on, you can go to our website at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/core, and you will find the article called 20 Core Areas of College Planning. And that article goes through the 20 different areas that families are going to have to work on in order to put together a good college plan. All right, so career planning is one of those 20 core areas. So what is career planning? Well, what does your student want to be when they grow up? Now, some students have a very focused agenda. They already know that they're on their way to nursing or engineering or liberal arts or teacher or whatever it might be, and they know the direction they want to go. But I think there's a challenge out there for a lot of students that say, well, I could do this or I could do that, or I'm really undecided. I can't decide what I like. So when it comes to career planning, there's a couple different ways that you can help your student at least maybe pick a direction. And of course, they also could consider going off to college undecided. Now, I have mixed feelings about that. Some of the experts I've talked to say that, that's fine. Others I've talked to say students are much more likely to succeed if they have a direction or a goal in mind. So that's, I guess, one decision that you need to figure out is, are we going to go undecided, or are we going to try and pick a career path and then adjust if we need to? Now, one area where you can get help is certainly right at your local high school. So your high school, in a lot of places now, are trying to develop some curriculum around career planning. And they try and help students figure out what career paths might be appropriate for their desires for education, for their skills, for their likes and dislikes, and those types of things. Now, if you're not getting much help at the high school, or you want even more help, you might be able to go to your local tech college or community college. A lot of times the 2 and 4 year local schools offer some sort of course, and they also potentially have counselors on hand that you may have access to as well. Another idea is job shadowing. I've had many students that, especially in the medical profession and a few others, where the students during high school could volunteer at volunteer at a hospital, or participate in a CNA program. But job shadowing certainly can be arranged in all areas. Like, again, I've heard about it in engineering and graphic design and reporting and all kinds of different areas where students might be able to follow somebody around that's involved in the career path that they're considering. And they also may be able to get internships or other school to work at their high school. And then finally, there's volunteer positions where you could volunteer at the local animal shelter or the local veterinary clinic or other businesses and charities to get a feel for what some of the career paths might be. And then finally, there's also websites. So there's Cooter and there's Career Cruising are the two names that I'm familiar with, and there's many more that are available. So you could sometimes for free, sometimes for a small fee, sign up and go through career assessments of various types to help you determine what kind of career path might be appropriate for your student. Before you pay for anything like this, though, you may want to go back to your high school and your local college. They may have access to some of this stuff for free or already paid for as part of your taxes, so to speak. So you could perhaps plug into some of those software packages through access through the high school and that type of thing. But at some point, career planning is something that the student's going to have to work on and or the parents are going to have to help with. And it makes choosing colleges and majors a little bit easier if you know what career path you're interested in. All right, now the optional area I wanted to talk briefly about is athletics. We've had a number of shows going back about athletics, so that's my number one recommendation is you go back and find a couple of the athletic recruiting shows, number 111, number 76, with Lisa Strassman and John Fugler. Both of those programs are great. They talk a lot about athletics and athletic recruiting. But the gist of it is if your student is interested in playing sports in college, that's an additional challenge that you're going to have to work out. So not only do you want to find a school that's a good fit because of majors and career paths and socially a good fit and financially a good fit and all that stuff, but you also need to find a college where the coach of your student's sport is interested in your student. So if you happen to have a right-handed pitcher in your family and a particular college does not need right-handed pitchers, you have a challenge in that. Do you want to attend the school even if you cannot play ball, or do you need to find a school where you are a good fit athletically as well as all the other criteria? If you're interested in athletics, that means you need to start a little bit earlier, ideally. So that's the other important thing to realize is if you've got an athletic student, it's not unusual for you to start understanding how the recruiting process works as early as your freshman year in high school. Now, you may not get into the major details yet because your student might be too young, but you may start talking to coaches and setting up visits and doing those types of things in your sophomore year, and certainly participating in tournaments and camps and other things, depending on your sport, to kind of understand the process and get your statistics and give these coaches an opportunity to meet your student. There's also things like creating film and doing other things that would be helpful for the colleges to recruit you. Bottom line, if athletics is in your future, you really need to start understanding what you're going to need to do and when you're going to need to do it and get started on it earlier than later. All right, that's all I want to cover and Brad recommends. Let's go ahead and jump into the interview with Dr. Gunn. All right, today I'm sitting down with Dr. Toinette Gunn. She is the VP of Programs at Chicago Scholars. Welcome, Toinette.
Thank you.
You are obviously the VP at Chicago Scholars, so I guess before we jump into Chicago Scholars directly, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your path and how you came to be doing what you do?
Sure. And so I am at Chicago Scholars now, but I have been in the college access or college readiness space for a little over 15 years. And so very passionate about working with young people and their families and helping them to get a quality education, and that quality education helping them to land at a good college, a college that's a good fit for them, where they're able to be successful. As I said, I've been in this industry about 15 years in doing that kind of work. And it's really key. I think it's very close and near and dear to my heart. I'm a first generation college student and did not have a whole lot of guidance getting to college or, outside of family support, guidance, to get through college. And so when I look back and the successes that I've had in my life, education's the reason for that. And so I'm very passionate about helping young people to stay on that journey in achieving their college education, because for me, it's broken intergenerational cycles of poverty in my family as a result of my education. And so I know firsthand how important education can be and what it can do to change the trajectory of a child's life, because I'm living that. I'm a living example. And so I, am very driven by that to do this kind of work every day, and just honored to be able to work with students and parents and helping them to change their lives.
All right. Well, great. So then obviously you're working with an organization that does just that. So tell us a little bit about Chicago Scholars as far as what that organization's about and what it does.
Sure. So Chicago Scholars was founded in 1996. We're a nonprofit organization, but we've become, in those 20 years, we've become the largest college access and success program in Chicago. And what that basically means is we're a program that's helping students get to and through college. But we have a unique spin on our program in that it's not just about college graduation for us. It is really about helping these young people to, yes, get to and through college, but to transition into careers and roles of leadership. And so we have a real big focus on college graduation, but also leadership of those young people so that they are able to help us to achieve our vision that we have for this great city in Chicago. And it is about, having a vibrant Chicago that's powered by diverse leaders from every neighborhood. And we believe that that's going to happen through education and through proper guidance and training of students. And so today we have more than 2,000 students in our program. We have a 7-year model that we are offering, again, college access, success, mentoring, leadership development, and career support for our students and helping them to achieve success and be ready to take on those leadership roles later in life.
Right. So can you give us some examples of the types of things that you're actually doing and working with families or students themselves? Or
So we are working with both students and parents, and it's a little divided up in how we do that. And so parents are involved from the very beginning, from the moment we have orientation with students, in establishing our partnership together. We have a common goal, and we need to work together to achieve that goal. And so we engage parents from the very beginning of our process with our students. But students come into our program, and so we've designed, I'm going to speak just to our college access part of our programming first. And we've designed that to look very much like the lecture lab that a student would have in a college environment. And so students come to us with a lack of information, lack of guidance around the college process. And we set them up with workshops. They have individual college counseling. We know nationally, high school seniors receive less than about an hour of college counseling in that senior year of high school. Our students are getting 8 individualized hours of counseling on top of 10 workshops that they go to. And those workshops and counseling sessions work in tandem, very much like the lecture lab. So they come to the workshop, they get all of the educational information that they need so that when they are in their counseling session with their counselor, they're able to be ready to work hands-on and get some things done. And so that's first and foremost is the workshops and the counseling sessions. From there, we pair them with mentors. And so we have a group mentoring model. And so we have 6 to 7 students who work with 2 to 4 mentors in a cohort. And they work through that application process together in addition to the college counselors' individual support.
Mm-hmm. So when does this actually start then? Are you starting with high school kids or what grade level, or is there a different starting points? Or
So our students start in our program the summer before their senior year. And those things that I just described, those workshops, those counseling sessions, those mentoring sessions, those are happening starting in June. And June through September, they are working on college applications. And by the beginning of October of their senior year, our students have applied to 5 or more colleges in that senior year of high school. And for their Chicago Public School peers, many of them have not even begun to start the exploration process, let alone apply to college that early in their senior year.
Right. Okay. obviously, if I'm a parent in Chicago, I find your phone number and give you a call. But if I'm a parent anywhere else, I'm assuming there's similar organizations across the country?
Yes, and so we partner with over 30 organizations in Chicagoland that provide similar services in terms of college access support to students. And in that partnership, we host a big college admissions fair, and we do this for the last few years. We've done it at Navy Pier. It happens in October. This past October, we had 175 colleges at that fair, along with about 1,000 students. And about 500 of those were Chicago Scholar students, and 500 were from community organizations, and they brought their students to that event. And so we not only focus on working with the students in Chicago Scholars, but how do we expand beyond our reach and work with other organizations. And so there are quite a few in Chicagoland that exist, that are working with students and that are partnering with us to help students through this process and to be able to apply to college that, in October of their senior year and participate in that fair that we have in October.
Right. Okay, so this type of program and information might be new to many of my listeners. So, and probably only a few of my listeners that happen to be in Chicago. So if we're trying to find your organization or a similar organization, how do we start? If you got a random call from someone in New Orleans and they said, I like what you're doing, but unfortunately I'm in New Orleans, not Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
How do I find similar things in my town? Where do people start? I'm thinking maybe school counselors, but what else could you do?
Yeah, so we're not immediately connected with what's happening, what the other organizations are across the country. However, what we can do very easily here in Chicago is point you in some directions of organizations that we partner with and that we know doing this kind of work. Beyond that, it would be a search on the internet and looking for college access programs, college support programs, college readiness programs, college preparation programs. College counselors, I think, would be a very good resource, and they are generally tapped into the community and what's available for students in the community. And we are our information is passed on to a lot of students through that very method. And here in Chicago, that students hear about us through their college counselors. And so it is a good approach, but we'd be happy for those that are maybe not in Chicago, but in one of the suburbs of Chicago to, connect them to any of the organizations that we partner with.
Right. Absolutely. But I guess the point being is if, for our listeners out there, if they're saying, well, this sounds good, I'd love to do that, somewhere locally with, wherever I happen to be.
Mm-hmm.
You can start with doing an internet search, and all those terms we'll put in the show notes that you just mentioned as far as college readiness and some of those key phrases that people need to search on.
Yes.
And then also you probably need to talk with your school counselor and see what, most of your programs like yours have good relationships with the school counselors and principals and those types of administrators at most schools, I would assume as well, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I'll also offer one site that they may be able to go to and get some more information as well. So there is a organization called the National Association for College Admission Counseling. And so they could definitely very well look up that website and go and browse around to see if there's more information there that they'd be able to utilize in their neighborhood and their community. The other suggestion I would have is they could start here. This is something for families who may not have the resources. This might not be the best place for them to go, but there are a number of individual educational counselors that provide the types of services that I just described that we are providing for our students, that they are providing for a service, for a fee. Mm-hmm. And a number of them have websites. There's an association that they could go to and find those individuals. But for families who don't have the resources for that, they want to, definitely look for a nonprofit or community-based organization like Chicago Scholars.
Okay. So can you give us some examples? I guess circling back around to more Chicago scholars. Obviously, you start working, as you mentioned, with a senior, and you're helping them with the application process and that type of thing. So, but then you also mentioned it was a 7-year program. So can you explain a little bit more about what other things you're doing besides just that
Sure.
kind of that senior focus?
Sure. And what I'm going to share, Brad, is information that parents can definitely, listen intently for, because they can do some of these things with their children as they branch off to college. And so the first part of our program, that first year of that 7-year model, is that college access piece. Once the student matriculates or enrolls in college, then we have a college success team that works with them to provide emotional support, emotional resources, financial resources, social support, just a number of activities. We have continued workshops for them where they're able to come, and this is where career readiness and career exploration things are happening for them, helping them to hone in on their leadership skills so that they're learning to really advocate for themselves, to be proud of their identity and what they bring to the table in terms of a community at a college, and being able to add value there because they have diverse backgrounds. We also really push them to advocate for themselves and being able to seek out the supportive resources that are on a campus. Majority of colleges today have a ton of resources available to help students to be successful, but students have to be proactive and they have to be the ones to initiate, and many times that support. And so really helping students to understand that their voice matters, and that when they realize that they need some support, that they have to be the ones to go and seek that out and to get what they need. We also really push students to stay connected and get involved on their campuses. And so through our college success team, these are things that we are encouraging them to do. There's a ton of research that supports a student who's more involved and more connected and feels a part of the community at a college is definitely way more likely to persist at that institution and graduate, versus one who does not feel connected. We see that those students then tend to transfer and have a much more difficult road to college graduation. And so those are some areas of support where parents can push their students when students are indicating that they're homesick, or they are having a little time adjusting, or they're struggling academically. There are resources available to them, and we want to make sure that parents are aware of that to encourage the students, even for parents who haven't been to college. Those are the ways that they can continue to support their students once they land there, and really encouraging them to seek out the support, the experts on those matters, to be able to help them to deal with whatever barrier they might be facing.
All right. So then obviously you spend a lot of time helping students, kind of pick careers and paths and majors and that kind of stuff. So what do you feel like are the important factors that students and parents need to consider when they're applying to a college?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I'll tell you what we have done here. We've identified a few things that we know that we know is really important in the college exploration and application process. And some of those, it starts with exploration and research. It is important that parents and students do their homework. They really need to search and learn about these colleges and, what's available at the colleges. And so first and foremost, do your homework, do the research. And as I mentioned earlier, College Board is a great place to do that. Many of the students have Naviance accounts there through their high schools. They're able to do that as well through there. But the other thing that we really push our students to look at is their academic profile and how it matches to that college's criteria for admission. And we know from research, we know from experience that students that are going to a college where they are a good academic match to that institution, they have a greater likelihood of being successful in graduating. We also have our students to look at the college their selectivity rating. That is, Barron is a national model that identifies colleges based on a rating. And what the research tells us is more selective colleges have higher graduation rates and students are more likely to be successful there. And so we push our students to look at colleges that are more selective. So the most selective colleges is where we're guiding our students to attend. But along those same lines, parents want to look at graduation rates. You really want to be careful about, selecting a college that isn't graduating students. And specifically, if you are an underrepresented minority, you want to look at what those graduation rates are, because what we have learned, unfortunately, about Chicago public school students is regardless of how academically qualified they are when they go to an institution, their graduation rates tend to mirror that of the colleges. And so if we know they're then landing at an institution that doesn't have a strong graduation rate, they're more likely to not graduate at that institution as well. And so we really look at that. Parents want to look at supportive services for the students and what their children may need to say, are they going to have the support that they're going to need to be successful there at that institution. They certainly want to look at area of study. You don't want to go somewhere where your major isn't covered, but that's not the first and foremost thing that we say you should be looking at. You want to look at financial aid packages and on average, how much financial aid does the institution award to students? And so that helps parents a little bit, provide some more information there. And the last thing that we really push is for parents to focus on fit for their students. And so I mentioned earlier the academic matchup, but then there's this fit piece that there's a ton of research about match and fit for students and how both of those help a student to be more successful. And what we mean by fit, and it's really very indicative of the word, but it is, does this college fit for this student? And it fits in a number of categories. Does it fit financially? Does it fit socio-emotionally? Does it fit culturally? Does it fit, geographically? There are a number of factors that will vary from student to student, but they have to be the ones to determine, is this a good fit for me? And parents have to be a part of that decision. Mm-hmm. But a big part of making that decision is visiting the campus. A student cannot determine if this is going to be a good school for them, a good fit for them, if they do not visit. And so once students have narrowed down maybe their top 3 to 5 schools, if this is a family that is not very well resourced, you're not going to be able to visit 20 colleges. So maybe you have to wait until you narrow it down to 3 to 5, but visit those campuses to get a sense for, does the student feel comfortable there? Do they feel as if they can see themselves there for the next 4 or 5 years and be successful there? And it is very much a chemistry piece as well. Colleges have personalities and students have personalities. And so they have to go and see, do the personalities mesh? Do they like it there? And you can't do that without visiting.
Right. And another piece of advice that I often give families is to do some preliminary visits
Yes.
locally to just kind of get your feet wet and see what a visit is about before you make that big trip or whatever you might be doing to, a little bit later in the process. But you could visit the local colleges, whether the local suburbs, the local urban schools, the local whatever, even though you're pretty sure you're not going to go to those schools, as just a kind of a low cost way to learn about a college. A lot of these colleges offer open houses and things on the weekends where you could just plug in and say, well, I don't really want to go to college in my backyard, but it's convenient for me to visit in my backyard, so I'm going to do that. And then once you've done that, you can make some determinations of, well, I liked it because it was big or small. Well, that can help you find big or small colleges in other states, or if that's your goal, is to go be out of state as an example.
You're absolutely correct. You are, we advise very similarly. We also advise parents, a lot of the colleges today have virtual tours, and so you can even go online and tour the campus. You can connect with other students and ask questions and things of that nature. But once you've really committed and you've been accepted to a college, a lot of the private institutions have fly-in programs. And so they want you to come. They want you to see their campus. They know that it's important that you step foot on that campus and really experience it. And so many of them have fly-in programs where they will fly you in for the weekend to be able to be on that campus to really get a good experience. But what you were just describing, Brad, excellent advice. We also indicate that visits look different for a freshman or a sophomore versus a junior and a senior. And so there are some things that once you get to be a little more upper class that you're going to want to do differently than you would do as a freshman or sophomore. Some of those include things like you can have an opportunity to sit in on a lecture. You can meet with professors individually. You can meet with an advisor. And so the higher level students, because they're closer to needing to make those decisions, their college visits should look a little bit different. Oftentimes they'll set you up with other students on the campus to be able to ask questions, have lunch with them, things of that nature. And so it's really important that those preliminary visits that you were talking about happen earlier than later, because you need to get a different sense for the campus as an older student than you do as a younger student.
Right, absolutely. So then early on in this, a few minutes ago, you mentioned we want to find a school that's a good academic fit. And I think that conceptually, I think most people get it. Yeah, we want to find a school that's, the right fit academically. But I think once you say, okay, I want to do that, I think a typical parent would say, I have no idea how to do that. So can you give us some examples of what you would actually do if you're trying to explore the academic side of a fit for college?
Sure. And it actually ends up being something that we use. We use a platform, of technology to help us figure that out. But parents are able to do that too. And whether it's looking on College Greenlight or College Board or using Naviance, as the students are able to do, they're able to easily identify by putting in their GPA, their test scores, and then connecting to colleges that kind of align with students, their freshman class of students that looks similar to those students. And so you then have an idea, and that's where that research comes in. You've got to use one of those kinds of tools to be able to help you narrow that down. I mean, there are thousands of colleges across the nation, and so that helps you to narrow it down to say, based on my child's academic profile, here are some colleges that match. And from there, it is then looking at some of those other things, and that list gets more narrow and more narrow. It's very broad to begin with, and the more you put in to say, I am interested in this kind of, area of study, and I want to be in this part of the country, and I want to be at a small institution. By the time you've put in all of those different categories, it narrows it down so that now maybe you have a list of 30 colleges versus, the 150 that you had from the beginning.
Right.
But they would definitely want to use some technology, and there are a number of them, but those are the ones that we use. College Greenlight, College Board. We have used in the past Naviance, and it's become more and more the tool for high schools. And if students have Naviance accounts, we recommend that they use them. They can do all of that searching in there. We've created our own tool here at Chicago Scholars, so we have our own search engine, but it's still very similar to those that I've described.
Right. So I guess, but in the essence now, let's really drill down into this. So essentially what we're talking about is, when you say the academic profile, what is a student's academic profile?
Yeah, so that's going to be their ACT or SAT score. It's going to include their GPA. And those are the two things that an institution very quickly will be able to, look at a student to say, does it align with our typical incoming freshman class?
Okay, so I'm going to slow you down here because we're going to keep drilling deeper. Okay, so
Sure.
I have a student. He's a junior. His GPA is 3.2, and his ACT score is 25. Okay, so now what do I do?
So that information is going to go in the search engine, and you're going to be able to get a list of colleges that may align with that. But as I mentioned earlier,
back up. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Align with it?
for instance, every institution has criteria and when they're looking at accepting a student. And what you're going to hear, a lot of institutions are beginning to say that they have a more holistic approach, and so they don't have a fast and hard cutoff to accept a student into their institution. Some institutions do. You look at a University of Chicago, they have a very strict, students who generally are accepted into our program have this GPA and this ACT score. And if you don't align with that in terms of matching very closely to that, your chances of being admitted into that institution are very much reduced.
Right. So essentially what you're saying is somehow through these various softwares and websites, et cetera, we need to find out what a institution is looking for or what they typically accept as far as test scores and GPA and that kind of stuff, and then see how we match up. Yes.
And that is all available through any of the sites that I've mentioned. You can see that information on a college's website. Let's say you're not even using a search tool and you just know, I want to go to Loyola University here in Chicago. You can go right to Loyola's site to go to their admissions area on their website to be able to get that information as to what does my GPA need to look like to apply to Loyola. What's the typical GPA? What's the typical ACT or SAT score? And that will be there on that college's website. The search tools help you to look broader and maybe say, I don't know exactly where I want to go, so I don't have a particular school to go right to their website. So you'll use one of those search tools to be able to do that.
Right, exactly. So the search tools essentially take the information for each individual college and put it all in one place so it's easier to find and a little quicker. But if you were going to do it completely by hand, you could say, well, these are the 100 schools I'm interested in. You could go to all 100 websites, look up their average ACT scores and their statistics on GPA and that kind of stuff, and then see if you're a good fit. Now that's
absolutely.
That's very tedious and takes a long time to do it that way. And that's where you would use some tools like we mentioned, Naviance, or College Board has a area called Big Future.
Yes.
And you mentioned Greenlight. I'm not familiar with that one, but yeah. So there's lots of tools along those lines that would then help you kind of do the searching a little more, where you can say, show me all the colleges in Illinois or whatever state you live in that have a ACT around this number. And then it'll quickly bring up the 10 that are in that area. So then you just drill into those 10 instead of starting with all 150 or whatever it might be in your state.
Yeah, and we would definitely want to, we want parents and students to look at that, but we definitely want to caution people to not, to look at those as averages. And so when a college is saying to you, we do look holistically at the student, the student may not match completely to what that profile is of those students, that freshman class that came in the year before or over time. But there may be some other factors in that student's, in their story that may be compelling for that college to really consider them. And those averages are just averages, which means there are students who get into those institutions that are much higher than those averages and some that are lower than those averages. And so we don't ever want to, tell a student to not reach. And so dreaming can be a little difficult, that if it is really, a dream for you to get accepted into that college. But if it's a reach and you're just, a little under the average, we do encourage our students to apply because they have compelling stories. They have other evidence of being ambitious, and they have other evidence of showing, of being talented outside of what that GPA and what that test score is. And if a parent's child has that compelling story, they want to make sure that they are able to highlight that in the college application, in their personal essays, their personal statements, their supplemental essays, to be able to showcase maybe they're exceptionally involved and engaged in their community, and they have leadership roles in their high school, in different organizations. And those are the things colleges want to hear, and they want to be able to see students who are well-rounded and not just a good student in the classroom? How are you going to contribute to our campus when you're here? And the best indication of that is to say, are they currently involved in their high school community? And so they do look at all of those things. And so remembering that averages are just averages, and some students are admitted who are above that average and some are admitted below that average.
Right. Absolutely. So, yeah, again, a lot of colleges, when they will use some sort of algorithm and that kind of thing, but they're more than happy to find the exceptions. But in a lot of cases, it's up to the student then to say, hey, look at me. I am an exception, and you need to, go outside the box and actually read my file and get involved. And I think that's another area that parents, it would be similar to looking for a job as an example, right?
Yes.
Some people will just fire off a resume and not do anything, and other people will network and talk with people they know at a company to find out what's going on and put a lot more effort into it.
For sure.
And a lot of times that extra effort is what lands you the job. And then
Absolutely.
Sometimes that extra effort doesn't help at all. And there's really no way to know. And most of the time you're not going to find out, oh, the reason you got the job is because you happened to talk to, your uncle's brother who happens to work here. And because of that, he, suggested that we at least give you an interview, and we liked you in the interview, and therefore you got in, even though you didn't quite have the right degree or whatever it might be. Those kind of stories we hear all the time, in the college realm as well.
Yes, they exist. We have a number of students who have either been waitlisted or, met at our college fair that we do in October, and the college says, this is what you need to do to strengthen your application. And a student who really wants to attend that institution, they will do that. They will take that information and that feedback and do what they need to do. And then we have had students to then be accepted. We've had students who have come to us to say, this is my first choice. I have always dreamt of going here. This is where I want to be. They waitlisted me. Is there anything that you recommend I do? Is there anything you all can do? And we will, when we are able to recommend that student, write a recommendation, or, make a phone call to see if there's anything we can encourage the student to do. So we will help advocate for them in the best way that we can. And parents can do that same thing. And so it's just a matter of not necessarily taking no. A no is a no, but if it's a wait list, if it's a deferral, like we haven't decided yet, there's still some room there to be able to say, what else can we do if this is really the place where the student wants to go? They've visited, they've done all of their research, they've talked to other students and done everything, and this is where I really want to go. That desire can help to change a decision or to enhance a decision.
Right. And then for parents out there, there's the flip side of it is, yes, sometimes students will fall in love with a particular school, and that ultimately just falls through and it isn't going to work out. And you just have to remember that there is lots of good fit schools out there for most students. And if one doesn't work out, there are alternatives that will be perhaps not their ideal dream, but probably just as good. And, obviously we've all dealt with the disappointing student, whether it's in their dating life or their whatever it is. And,
yes,
the reality is many schools are appropriate for most students. And if the first choice doesn't quite work out, a second choice should be certainly a good path. And a whole lot of people end up going to their second or third choice. It's not unusual at all.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And it is one of the things that is key in our advising around, 5 or more applications. And so counseling experts will indicate somewhere between 5 and 10. A student should apply to multiple schools. It shouldn't just be 1 or 2 schools to begin with. So what you're describing, Brad, is just that. Like, you need to, one, have a diverse, pool of schools that you're going to apply to. And one of the other things that we say on top of 5 or more colleges is, you need to have a school in there that's a safety for you, and a safety being very much what it sounds like, a school that should these other ones fall through, that you're very much likely nearly guaranteed to get into that institution. But the caveat there with a safety school is it should still be a school that's a good fit for you. It should still be a school that you really would attend if you had to go there, and that you would enjoy it. So to your point earlier, but you've got to have multiple applications so that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. And you're diversifying, the types of schools that you're applying to, so that, to your point, if it ends up being your second or third choice, that you will still be okay with that.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, I think we learned a ton. I really appreciate all the great information. If people want to learn more about your program or how to get in contact with you, can you give us how they should do that?
Yes, they can go right to our website, chicagoscholars.org, and my contact information is there. We have an amazing team here at Chicago Scholars. If someone's looking specifically for other community organizations, we have a manager of community relationships, and that information is on our website too. That person could speak with the parents to offer information on Chicagoland community programs that we partner with, but we'd be happy to have students who are in Chicago apply to Chicago Scholars. Our application process for this year just closed, and so we will open it up again in the fall for students who are in their junior year to apply. And so we would encourage families to visit our website, learn more about us, and certainly for those in Chicago to keep us in mind for their students as they reach that junior year of high school.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We will stay in touch.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. That was a great interview with Dr. Gunn. Hopefully you learned a ton. As always, all the links and references in the program are available in the show notes at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/115. This is the 115th episode. If you need additional help or information, please feel free to give us a call or contact us through our website. We're always here to answer your questions or provide guidance to whatever you might need. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.